Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In today's video, I'm actually doing a tutorial in response to one of my subscribers' comments. He states that he's been trying to pass a text from one scene to the other, so I've created this little application that hopefully will help him and help you solve any problems that you might occur. So let's get into it. I'll just run this quickly. So shout out to him. Firstly, his name is Nissan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and hopefully this is his dream game, and hopefully I've helped him solve his problem. So he wanted a user to enter their name, so I can just say the ultimate developer. That's our channel name, and I'll just put a smiley face. And when I click submit, it takes me to another scene where it says lobby, where you can choose your characters, your weapons, and your servers. And on the top right, I have a button to display my player profile. So he wanted the player name and other details to be listed on that player profile. So what I've done is I created this simple scene. When I click this button, my player name is the ultimate developer with a smiley face down there. I can close this player profile and it takes me back to the lobby. So hopefully Nissan, this helps you out, and let's get into the video. Okay, so I have a basic scene set up. The reason I didn't go through me creating each element and creating the UI is because I think it's going to take too much of time, and I think we should focus more on the implementation and the code to get the actual thing working. So I've set up my scene. This is scene 1, and I have some text to display the heading. I have a text to prompt the user to enter your name. I have a simple input text text mesh pro, input field text mesh pro, and I have a button to say submit. Then I created another scene and I call this scene 2. In scene 2, I have a text heading to say lobby, and these are just things that I've just placed here. It doesn't even matter, it doesn't even have anything to do with this tutorial. It's basically just a visual aid, just so that my scene 2 doesn't look very empty. And lastly, I have a player profile button on the top right. Okay, so what I am going to start with is creating our panel that's going to actually display our username in our scene 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click in canvas, we're going to go down to UI, and we're going to select a panel. Then we're going to go right click on the panel and go all the way down to UI and select button text mesh pro. We'll expand that button. We'll take our rect tool and bring that in. Next, what we want to do is expand this button, go to the text component, and we're going to put a capital X in it. We'll increase the font size and we'll move this to the top left of the screen. Then what we're going to do is we're going to right click on panel, we're going to go all the way down to UI and select text mesh pro. This is where we're going to display the username. So we'll just change the color and we'll rename this to username text. And we need one more. We'll duplicate this and we'll rename this to username text holder. We'll bring that out a bit and we'll get our rect tool and just stretch that out so it can fit a lot of words in it without overfilling the text holder. So as you can see, I created a empty game object. So before I just explain that, what we're going to do is for now we're going to turn this panel off. So we'll click the panel, we'll go down to its inspector and we'll just turn it off. Then I created a empty game object and I attached all of my game objects that I want to be turned off when I select the player profile. So I just dragged it and put it as children object of this empty game object, so that when I just turn this game object off, all of these children objects go off as well. So if I show you that quickly, if I select my game object and I go to its inspector and I just turn it off, as you can see, all of its children objects are turned off. If I turn it back on, they all appear again. So we'll save our work. What we can do quickly is we can just hook this button up. So when I click this button, I want to deactivate all of this text and I want to activate this panel. So I have a shortcut that I'm going to share with you guys today, and hopefully this makes your work a bit easier. It saves us time for going into the code and setting panels active and setting game objects active and inactive. So what we're going to do is we'll go into the player profile button, we'll go on to its on-click event, we'll add a on-click event, we'll just drag the panel in there. Then we'll go to the function, we'll select game object and we'll go all the way down to where it says set active bool. Then what we're going to do is we're going to check this box to say set active, so this is equal to true. Then what we want to do is when we set this panel on, we also want to set this panel off, or we also want to set all of this text off. So what we can do is we can just add one more on click event. We'll drag the game object in there. We'll do the same thing. We'll go to game object and we'll select set active bool, and we'll uncheck be false. We'll save our work, and then we can just turn this game object off, turn this panel on, and let's take care of the close button. So when I click this button, I want to deactivate my panel and activate my game objects. So what we can do is a similar concept. We add a on click event, drag the panel in, game object, set active bool, and we know we want to set it false, so this needs to be unchecked. Then we'll set this panel off. Once again, we'll set our game objects on. Sorry, before we do that, we need to add one more on click event because we need to turn this game objects on. So we'll go to game object, set active, and we'll check this box. So now if I run this scene, let me show you what happens. When I click my button, as you can see, all of my game objects go away. The only thing I have left is my username and the eventual player name that's going to appear here. When I select close, this panel goes away and I'm back to my lobby. Okay, so that's working fine. So what we're going to do now, we're going to head over back to our scene 1 and we're going to get started with our script. We're going to right click in our assets folder and we're going to create a new C# script. We're going to name this scene 1. We're going to double click to open it up in Visual Studio, and we're just going to get rid of all of this code here because I'll be using Unity's Text Mesh Pro. I'll add a library called TM Pro. The first thing we're going to do is create an instance of the current class, right? So how we do this is we'll say public, or we'll create a variable of this current class. So how we're going to use this class, basically we're going to use this class like a variable. So what we'll say is public static, and we'll call this scene1, and we're just going to rename this to scene1. Then what we need is a public text mesh pro input field for our user input field. So we can say public, we're going to say public tmp underscore input field, and we're going to call this input field. Then we need a string that we're going to actually store this username in. So what we're going to say is public string, and we'll call this the player name. So now we can get started with our actual implementation. So the way that I've found best to work, or to work for me, is by using a singleton design pattern. It might not be the best option, but it works for me, and I'll probably try different options in the future just to see what's the most practical. But if you guys do find a better way or a better method, please do comment below. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a awake function, and in this awake function we're going to create our singleton. And basically to just give you a quick understanding of what a singleton is, it's just to ensure that there's only one instance of whatever you're trying to do. So only one instance of this game object in your entire game. So what we're going to do is we'll say if scene1 is equal to null, we don't want to destroy this game object. Now before I do that, in order to say game object, all I'm going to say is scene1 is equal to this. So it knows that we're talking about, when I say game object, it knows that I'm talking about the scene1. And I'm going to just say else, if there is another instance of this, we're going to destroy this instance. So that's our basic singleton. As I said, it might not be the best method, but it does work. Next, we need a function to actually set the name for us. So we'll create a public void function, and we'll call this set player name. Then all we're going to say is player name is equal to input field dot text. Okay, so basically what this is doing is saying that when I click this button, set our string to be equal to whatever the user inputs. Okay, but what we also want to do is when I click this button, we want to switch to a different scene. Alright, so what we're going to do is we need to add a library called using Unity engine .scene management. Then we can come all the way down here and we can say scene manager .load scene async, and we can just pass in the string of the name of our scene. So we want to transition to scene 2. Okay, one thing to take note of, you need to make sure that this scene and the scene that you want to transition to is in your build. Let me just show you that. What we can do is go to file, go to build settings, and make sure that both scenes are in your build settings. So we can add open scenes, and we can also drag our scene 2 in there, and it should look like this. Then you can close that off, and we can create an empty game object, and we can just call this Scene1 manager. We'll drag the Scene1 script onto it, and we can just populate the input field. So we'll drag our input field in there, and the reason we don't need to drag anything in here is because this is going to be populated once we hit the submit button. So we'll go to scene 2 and let's get that started. So we're going to create a new script, and we're going to call this scene 2. We'll double click to open it up in Visual Studio, and I'll get rid of this code. And because I'm using TextMesh Pro, all I'll say is using TM Pro. So this is really a simple script. All we're going to do is we're going to say public TextMesh Pro UGUI, and we're going to call this display the player name. Then we'll create an awake function, and we're going to set this text holder to whatever the user entered. So how we're going to do that is we're going to say display player name dot text is equal to scene1 dot scene1 dot player name, and we can close this off. Then we head over back to our Unity. We'll create an empty game object. Just make sure that its position is reset. We'll rename this to Scene2 manager, and we'll drag our Scene2 script onto that. Then we need to populate where we want to display our text. So we know that it's in our panel, and it's the username text holder. So we'll drag that in there. We'll save our work. We'll open our scene 1, and let's run this and see how everything works. I can just run this, and I'll just type in innocence. I'll click submit, and nothing happens. The reason being is we didn't hook this button up. So we can just go to our submit button, go to our on-click event. We'll drag our scene1 manager in here. We'll select our script, which is called scene1, and our function is called set player name. Save our work once again, and we hit play. I'll just retype this name. I'll say innocence. I'll click submit. There you see, it takes us to a new scene. On the top left, you can see we no more in scene 1, we on scene 2. And you see here in our don't destroy and load, our scene 1 manager is still running. So now when I click player profile, all I want to see is everything going away, my new panel coming up with the username. And there you see it, username innocence. I can close this off, and I head back over to the lobby. If I go back into it, the name still stays here. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider hitting that subscribe button and liking this video, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.